Okay, this is the very first Mishna of the Perek, Eilu Metzios. So we're going to read and translate. Eilu Metzios Shelo. These findings are his to keep. The Eilu Chayav Lehachris. And these other ones he has to announce. So the Mishnah is giving us like an introduction or a title that there's going to be two types of lost items. Some of them you are allowed to keep them, and some of them you are obligated to announce them. Eilu Metzios Shelo. Now we're going to talk about the Metzios, the findings that you are allowed to keep. Later, the next Mishnah is going to discuss the findings that you have to announce. But again, in this Mishnah, we're going to focus on Eilu Metzios Shelo. These ones you can keep. The Mishnah now is going to list several examples. Matzah pears mefuzarin, if you find scattered fruit. Maos mefuzaros, or if you find scattered money. Krichos bereshus rabim, or if you find bundles of wheat that are found in the public domain, in public, like in the street. Veigule de veila, or if you find a cake made of figs. Kikaros shel nachtom, or breads that are made by a baker. Umachruzos shel dagim, or if you find strings of fish. What that means is fish that were caught and they're hang on a string to carry them. Vechatichos shel basar, and pieces of meat, cuts of meat. Vegizei tzemer alekuchin me medinasan, or if you found shearings of wool in the same way that they were brought from the country of origin, meaning that the wool has not been processed. It was imported from a foreign place, and it all looks like a clump, as we'll see later on. So if you find such a wool in such a condition that this still looks the same way as it was imported, it hasn't been changed, then you're allowed to keep it. Vianitze pishtan, if you find pieces of pishtan, which is flax. Flax, as we'll see later in the pictures, is a plant, and from this plant you make a fabric called linen. So if you find pieces of linen, you're allowed to keep it. Uleshono shel argaman, if you find pieces of argaman, which is purple wool, and leshonos means that they're shaped in the shape of a lashon, of a tongue, but just regular pieces of purple fabric. Are eilu shelo. All these items that have been listed, you're allowed to keep. Now Rashi is going to explain that the reason why you can keep them is oil ve'ein lahem siman nikar. Since there's no sign on these things, all these items that are listed in the Mishnah so far are things that are very common. There are many, many of the same. The owner gives up hope of getting them back because he has no way to prove that it was his bunch of fruit or his scattered money or his cake or his particular bread that he bought from the baker. Ve'havelehem hefkir, and because the owner gives up hope, these items become ownerless, so anybody can keep it. Vezeu tam kulam, says Rashi, this is the reason for all the items that are mentioned in the Mishnah. This is why you're allowed to keep them, because since the owner cannot claim them, he cannot prove that they were his. There's no siman, there's nothing unusual about these items, they're very common. Therefore he gives up hope, and once he gives up hope, the item becomes ownerless. Whoever finds it can keep it. Divrei Ravi Meir. This is the opinion of Ravi Meir. What we said till now is the opinion of Rav Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol sheyesh bo shinui, if something has an unusual thing on it, an unusual feature on them, chayav lehachris, then you have to announce it because there's something different, in particular about the item. Ketzad, for example, matzah igul, if you were to find a cake, ubesocho cheres, and you find a piece of cheres, of pottery, in this cake, so that's something unusual. Or kikar, if you found, for example, a loaf of bread, ubesocho maos, you find a coin that somehow fell into this dough, into this bread, so now there's something particular, there's something different, and therefore the owner doesn't give up hope. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar teaches another halacha, Kol kli and furia, Anything that is, any utensil that is brand new, the owner lost it as soon as he bought it, en chayav leachris. You don't have to announce it. And the Gemara explains later on why. Because it's something that is brand new, the owner didn't get a good look at it, so therefore he cannot really identify it and recognize what he lost. Now, we're going to take a look at some of the items that the Mishnah mentioned just to get a clear picture. These are the krichos, these are the bundles. When the farmer cuts the wheat, the stalks, then he ties them and he leaves it in the field for a while, then he takes them to a market, he takes them to sell. So this is a common way of farmers processing their wheat. They tie it, and there are many bundles. Basically, all the farmers do the same thing. So if you find a bundle like this in the street, the owner would not be able to prove that this particular bundle is his. Maybe it was somebody else's. Another item that was mentioned in the Mishnah is ikule de veila, fig. So this is what a fig looks like. It's a very sweet fruit, and when it ripens, it becomes a little bit brown. And then when they press it together, they make these cakes. Now the Mishnah is not talking about this shape of cake. The Mishnah is talking about igule. They were like round, like a pie. But this is the same idea. They press the figs together, and this was a common type of cake in the time of the Mishnah. The Mishnah also mentioned kikarot shel nachtom, baker's bread. So a baker, he mass produces. So he makes hundreds, if not thousands, of breads with the same mold. They all look the same. So assuming that it's a small town and there's only one baker, guess what? All the baker's bread looks the same because there's only one bakery. This is what it looks like. So again, if you find a bread like that, the owner could not prove, oh, that's my bread, because maybe somebody else has everybody buys the same bread. Now the Mishnah mentioned this idea of machruzos shel dagim, strings of fish. This is what fishermen sometimes do. They catch a bunch of fish and they put a string like this, and that's how they carry them home. Again, this was a common way of transporting fish, and therefore there is no seaman. There's no way for the owner to prove that this bunch of fish is his more than somebody else's. The Mishnah talked about tzemer, right? This is what wool looks like. If you shear a sheep, if you shave a sheep, these are the clumps of wool, and it's not processed. So clumps of wool, they all look the same. So again, the owner would not be able to prove that this is his and not somebody else's. The Mishnah also mentioned anitze pishtan. So this is what flax looks like. This is a plant, and from this plant they bang it, they process them, they take the strings, and they make a very fancy fabric called linen. From linen they make fancy jackets and pants and all kinds of articles of clothing. So these are items that in the time of the Mishnah were very, very common, and if somebody dropped them, he would be able to keep it because there is nothing unusual about these items. No one could prove that they were theirs. Now finally, just to get a look at the Mishnah, this is the Mishnah organized in a different way, just to get a visual picture. So the Mishnah begins by giving us like a title. It tells us that there are two types of Aveda, of findings, Eilu of Metzios. Eilu Metzios shelo. Sometimes the findings belong to you, the finder. Ve'elu chayav leachris, and sometimes you have to announce it. Now this Mishnah is going to talk about one of these two categories of findings, Eilu Metzios shelo, the ones that you're allowed to keep, and it gives us these 10 examples. Okay, to go over them quickly is if you find fruits that are scattered or money that is scattered, or if you find bundles, well, now we know what bundles are in the public place. Igule de veila, we saw the picture of the fake cakes. This is a common type of cake at the time of the Mishnah. Kikarot shel nachtom, baker's bread, they're all the same. Machruzos shel dagim, now we see here that this is a string of fish, and this is again a common way of transporting fish that the person caught. Chatichos shel basar, cuts of meat, standard. Gizet tzemer abaos memedinasan, shearings of wool that came from their country, meaning that the wool is still in the clump form. It hasn't been processed into fabric. There's no particular color, size, shape. It's still in a clump form, and therefore all clumps of wool are basically the same. The owner could not prove that one clump is his as opposed to somebody else's. Ve'anitze pishtan, pieces of flax, uleshono shel argaman, in purple fabric, Eilu shelo. So this is the din. All these items that we have before, these 10 examples, Eilu shelo. If you find you can keep him. And that was Rav Meir's opinion. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol sheyesh bo shinui chayav lehachris. If there is something unusual, shinui is the word shoneh, manishtana, something different, you have to announce it. These are the two examples that he gives. Keitzad, for example, matzah igul besocho cheres, if you find a round cake and there's a piece of pottery, or if you find a kikar, a piece of loaf of bread and there's money. And finally, Rabbi Shimon tells us his halacha, his din. Rabbi Shimon Lazar Omer, kol kli amfuria, if you find something that is brand new, einu chayav leachris. This you do not have to announce. I'm sorry, this you don't have to announce because it's brand new. The owner didn't get a good look at it. He cannot identify. He cannot prove that it's his, and therefore the finder can keep it.